And so we work on a program, it's our Native Energy and Climate Program, and basically it's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. You can read it here about what it is we do, but a lot of folks in our communities are, just trying to live everyday life, pay the bills, pay the health bills that come up. It's not necessarily a convenience for people to go and organize. Like the work that we're able to do, we feel very lucky because we actually are able to go and organize in the communities and do the work that we do. I'm from an impacted community in North Dakota where we have oil development. North Dakota is now the 4th largest oil producing state in the country of the United States. Yeah, boo. It's a result of a technology called hydraulic fracturing. Has anybody heard of that? Raise your hand. Okay, good, because it's kind of hard to explain. Hydraulic fracturing is a process where they take up to 2,500 chemicals, mix it with our clean water, and pump the chemicals down into shale oil, to get out the oil. So they're basically creating mini earthquakes that crack the shale, and then they use pressure and steam to push the oil up. And then after, they use about 3 million gallons of water per oil well, and when they're done, they take the water and they just inject it into an underground site. And it's not lined or anything like that, the site that they line it in. But the companies in North Dakota on my reservation called Fort Berthold, they have to pay $30,000 to take the water to that underground site. But if that water gets dumped somewhere else, it's only a $10,000 fine. So what we see on my reservation is all of these contamination in our wells. Can you be quiet? We have contaminated water. And our state hydrologist has told us in North Dakota, without energy production, we are going to have our water running out in about 60 years without the production. On top of that, in North Dakota, there are 7 coal-fired power plants. In 2003, the North Dakota Health Department has told us every single bit of our over 11,000 miles of rivers, lakes, and streams is contaminated with mercury. That was in 2003. And what we're seeing in our children is way increased asthmas. We're seeing increased cancers, heart attacks, stroke, all of these things that have been happening but have been accelerating. This was before the oil industry moved in. We also have in North Dakota the United States' first ever coal gasification plant. We were the test project in the 1970s. And it sort of dwindled a bit, and now it's making a comeback, coal to liquids. And so we are the 2nd least populated state in the United States. So it's very convenient for the government to say, well, North Dakota, not very many people live there. And even worse, well, the reservations have loopholes. For instance, there's a proposed oil refinery that they want to put on my reservation. So this is in addition to everything else. They want to pipe down the oil sands from Canada, refine it on our reservation, and then the energy goes elsewhere, right? So with this oil refinery, because it would be on a reservation, they wouldn't need an air monitoring permit to monitor the quality of the air for everything that's coming out of there because it's small enough. It's just below the threshold. In my community, I almost didn't come here this week. I didn't almost come here this week because last week I was at home because my friend, who was my age, passed away. 1 year ago, this week, she was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a tumor in her bladder that was inoperable. So she had treatment, chemotherapy, lost her hair. And they tried for a year to help her. But she decided that what they were doing to her was worse than being alive and living that way. She couldn't use the bathroom properly. She was going to the bathroom through a tube, and it kept getting infected. She was always sick all the time. Couldn't take care of her kids, 2 kids, 7 years old and 12 years old. And on last Tuesday, we buried her in Newtown. And then 2 days later, we buried my mom's friend. So my friend was 31 years old, and my mom's friend was 48 years old. And my mom's friend had been fighting a cancer that started in her lungs, and then it spread to her brain, and it caused cerebral palsy on the side of her face, so she couldn't communicate properly. Spread to her bones, so she couldn't walk. She was in a wheelchair. Spread to her blood. It was just everywhere. And for 3 years she fought. And she was just refusing to give up her fight. And here's this woman in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy, can barely speak, telling me, you know, I'm encouraged by you and what you do. Keep doing what you do, because somebody needs to speak on our behalf. Because our own leaders have sold out to the industry, the ones that were put into these positions of power. They've been told you're going to get jobs and you're going to get money. And so when these things happen, we end up getting maybe 2 jobs out of hundreds, our own people. What I'm seeing in North Dakota is an influx of people from here, from Mexico, and from all over the world and from different parts of the states. And what happens is the people that we bring from Mexico, they don't get paid nearly as much as the people that live there, because just the way it is, somebody lies to them, tells them that's all they can make. And it's dangerous work. People have died working on the oil rigs. They call it roughnecking. And people that die, they don't talk about it. It's very secretive, hush hush. And a lot of the people don't talk about it because there are people living there on the reservation that don't have papers or documentation. But they're still allowed to work for the oil industry. We also have a shortage in our housing. It's a crisis. We have elders living in our casino because they have nowhere to live. And yet these people that we're bringing in from other places are having houses. There's whole man camps as big as this field. They call them man camps, where people are living in North Dakota, where right now it's 5 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. And there's no sewage systems. All of the little towns there are expected to pay their own infrastructure. The oil companies aren't helping them. The roads are falling apart, and the traffic of the semis, the trucks, it's unbelievable. We've had so many deaths because of the semis just taking over the roads and speeding and going everywhere, because they have to haul millions and millions and millions of gallons of water to be able to do the processes of the oil. 2 years ago, I had a friend who was driving home, and she took her dad's big old diesel truck because she said, I don't know, I just want to feel safe. And he said, sure, take my truck. And she was driving home, and one of those semis passed her. But a car was coming, because it's just only, a 2-lane road. And the semi had to get back in his lane. But he didn't leave enough room. He clipped her car. And when he did that, his back end spun out, she went like this, and they both hit the ditch. And that truck, that semi, landed on top of her dad's truck. When we had her funeral, all we had was a table with her picture. Because there was nothing left. And she was in school, she was starting to do the work that I do. That that's just a few people. There's so many others. The day that we buried my mom's friend last week, my other mom's friend found out his cancer spread to his brain. We've had 5 people in a community of 300 die from brain cancer in the last 2 years. One of them was a boy that I worked with in the Boys and Girls Club. He planted trees with me, and when he was sick, he was like, I'm doing good things right. Right, Kandi? Even if I'm not here. And I said, don't talk like that. He said, somebody someday is going to see my tree and it's going to help, right? It's going to help save our planet. He died this summer in July. He was 9. And so people start to feel powerless because all of these things that are going on in our communities with this pollution is allowed to continue because of false solutions. There are carbon market mechanisms that are being discussed here at this COP16 that are false solutions to climate change because they allow countries like the United States to continue polluting without any repercussions. We need to stand together and realize that this is not a real solution. Commodification of the air, privatization of the sacred. This is crazy. These schemes that are being talked about here. And people are saying that a victory here in COP16 would be passing a scheme like REDS, which is reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. And so, as the Indigenous Environmental Network, we are here to try to hold the line, to take that hard stance and say, we know the reality is about this. It looks good, right? It looks good. Who doesn't want to save forests? But when you read between the lines, there's a lot of really bad things that they want to do to control Indigenous peoples and take away Indigenous people's rights. And as the Indigenous Environmental Network, we are here to say no. We're not going to allow you to do these things to Indigenous peoples because we've already worked with peoples that are working on REDS projects right now. And we've seen firsthand what they do. They can take a forest like this and clear cut it because it's overburdened. And they can plant eucalyptus and they can plant palm oil, monocultures, and say, oh, this is a good project. We're still sequestering carbon, so it's okay. They can put a fence up around an area once a contract is signed and not allow the Indigenous peoples to go and manage their own forests anymore. They can't naturally burn their own forests like they do. They can't go in there and even pick berries now with RED++. See, it started red, and then there was RED+, and then there was RED++. See, they keep going further and further as to what people can and can't do with their own land. So not only are our people dying as Indigenous peoples in the United States, there's Indigenous peoples around the world, and it's just being affected here and being affected here. But yet they're turning us against each other. Divide and conquer. This idea of colonialism, capitalism, continual growth has got to stop. The economy, continual growth is not sustainable. As people, we have to take responsibility for what we're doing to the plants, the animals, the water, the air. Because if we don't, this Mother Earth of ours, she's going to shake us off like an old batch of fleas on a dog and say, I'm rid of you. And she'll go on for years to heal herself, and we won't be here to see it. And we're doing it to ourselves by allowing this and this corporate control to continue. Thank you.